Welcome to this deep dive. You wanted to get better at communicating, right? So
Yeah.
we're diving into Samuel Greenberg's How to Become a Communication Genius, 49 Simple Rules.
Okay, cool.
It's got some pretty fascinating advice in here. We're talking
Yeah.
like body language secrets
Huh.
and
Yeah.
even a persuasion method that the ancient Greeks used.
Oh.
And we'll also touch upon why you should never tell someone they're wrong.
Okay, that I gotta hear about.
Yeah, so the book is
It sounds really practical, though. Like,
Yeah.
it really is.
a cheat sheet almost for
Yeah.
just having better conversations.
Exactly. And it's not just about, like, sounding smart or, being
Yep.
clever or
Just from
whatever.
connecting.
Yeah, about really connecting with people.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right in.
Okay.
The book starts out by emphasizing the importance of sincerity.
Got it.
And that basically means, like, truly caring about the other person.
Yeah, being genuine.
Yeah, being genuine, but it's more than just like being nice, right? Yeah, it's more than just like surface level politeness, I think.
Okay.
He's saying that great communication really starts with being interested,
Oh,
not just interesting.
interesting.
So it's that shift in perspective
Oh,
from like trying to be the most, like witty or the smartest person in the room to actually being curious about the other person.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's this great story in the book, and it talks about a renter who is facing eviction.
Mm.
And so instead of, pleading her case or whatever, she just focused on the landlord's perspective.
Oh, interesting.
And, was sharing how much she loved the apartment and
Right.
how it felt like home. And by appealing to his emotions, she ended up convincing him to let her stay.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
kind of counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, it totally worked.
Ah.
And the book also highlights the power of a simple smile.
Yeah.
We all know that smiling makes us seem more approachable, but Greenberg takes it a step further.
Yep.
Well, he explains that smiling actually triggers a positive feedback loop.
Oh.
So, when you smile, it doesn't just impact how other people perceive you,
Right.
but it also boosts your own mood.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's like a win-win.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's good for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was surprised by how much the book stressed the importance of listening.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we often think about communication as talking,
Mm-hmm.
but Greenberg makes a really compelling case that listening is even more crucial.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to understand the other person before you can actually respond
Right.
in a meaningful way.
Exactly. He differentiates between passive listening,
Okay.
which is, basically where you're just hearing the words,
Right.
active listening, where you're fully engaged,
Okay.
you're trying to understand the speaker's perspective,
Mm.
and you're responding in a way that shows that you're actually following along.
Gotcha. So you're not just like
Yeah.
nodding your head and saying, uh-huh.
It's exactly.
You're actually like processing what they're saying.
Yes. And then he introduces this fascinating concept called additional information.
Additional information.
Yeah. And
I like that.
it's not about what people say directly,
Oh.
but rather like the unconscious details that they reveal that can give you a deeper insight into what they're thinking.
So it's like
Yeah.
reading between the lines.
Yeah, picking up on those little cues.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing called the nodding technique.
Okay, the nodding technique?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
I thought it was pretty funny at first too.
Uh-huh.
But the more I thought about it, the more it actually made sense.
Okay, how so?
Well, it's not just about like showing agreement or,
Yeah.
pretending to listen.
Right.
Greenberg says that nodding actually releases endorphins
What?
Yeah.
In your brain.
in both the nodder and the receiver.
Oh, wow.
So it creates this sense of like shared positivity
Interesting.
and connection.
Yeah, like nonverbal
Yeah.
agreement. I like that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like mastering these listening skills is really a game changer
Yeah, for sure.
when it comes to communication.
It's like the foundation of
Yeah.
a good conversation.
But the book also has advice for speaking.
Right. Right. Because we don't want to just listen.
Right.
We want to be able to
Got to say something.
contribute to it.
Exactly. Yeah. After all, we want to be able to express ourselves clearly and confidently too.
Yeah. So what does he say about that?
Well, the book delves into the importance of your voice
Okay.
and things like pacing and intonation and pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And it even talks about avoiding what he calls crumpled phrases.
Sampled phrases.
Yeah, which is basically, where you start strong, but then you kind of trail off at the end,
Oh, yeah.
which undermines your message.
Like you're not sure.
Yeah, like you're
Second guess.
second guessing yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've definitely been guilty of
I
that.
think we all have.
Yeah. And the book suggests a simple but effective tip, which is to use the beat of your steps
Ooh.
when you're walking to practice speaking more slowly
Okay.
and deliberately.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, what I found really fascinating was the connection that Greenberg makes between self-confidence
Yeah.
and strong communication.
Yeah.
So when you believe in yourself and what you have to say,
Right.
it shines through.
It makes sense.
Right. And he suggests reflecting on your own achievements
Okay.
to boost your inner belief.
Yeah, like remember what you're good at
Exactly.
and what you've accomplished.
Because after all, you've accomplished some pretty incredible things.
That's true.
You have. So reminding ourselves of our successes can help us approach conversations with more confidence.
Yeah, I like that.
So we've covered sincerity,
Yeah.
active listening,
Mhm.
the power of self-belief.
Okay.
But I'm really intrigued by some of the book's more strategic advice. Like the Socratic method you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
Okay, well, the Socratic method is basically this technique for persuasion
Mhm.
where you get someone to agree with you 3 times in a row.
Okay.
And this makes them much more likely to agree a 4th time,
Oh.
even if it's on a more contentious point.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it suddenly taps into our desire for consistency.
Oh, so they've already agreed 3 times, so why
Yeah.
not a 4th?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
But is
Yeah.
there any ethical concern with that?
That's a great point.
Like, is it manipulative?
Yeah. And while the Socratic method can be effective,
Right.
it's important to use it ethically.
Yeah.
The key is to focus on genuine dialogue
Mm-hmm.
and mutual understanding, not just like
Right.
winning an
Not
argument.
just trying to, like, trick someone.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's about finding those 3 points of genuine agreement
Yeah.
that naturally lead to your main point, rather than like manipulating someone into agreeing with you.
Right. Using it for good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The book also highlights the importance of seemingly small details,
Mm-hmm.
like using the other person's name
Oh, yeah.
and offering sincere compliments.
Okay.
Why is that so impactful?
Well, I mean, I think it all comes back to just basic psychology. You
Mm.
know, we all have this deep-seated desire to feel seen and heard and appreciated. And so using someone's name just personalizes that interaction.
Right.
And a genuine compliment can brighten their day and just make them more receptive to what you have to say.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing called the I statement technique,
Okay.
which the book recommends for turning complaints into constructive requests.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, instead of saying, "You're always late,"
Right.
which can sound really accusatory,
Yeah.
you can say,
Okay.
"When you're late, I feel worried.
Okay.
Could you please try to give me a heads up if you're going to be delayed?" So it shifts the focus from blame to your own feelings and needs.
I see.
And this makes it more likely that the other person will actually be receptive to what you have to say.
So you're not attacking them.
Exactly.
You're just explaining how you feel.
Yeah. And it invites collaboration rather than confrontation.
Right.
So speaking of confrontation,
Oh.
I'm curious to hear what the book has to say about navigating those tricky conversations,
Yeah.
especially when disagreements arise.
Right, where things can get heated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to wait because we'll explore Greenberg's advice on handling disagreements gracefully in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, cool. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's dive into some of those trickier communication scenarios.
Yeah, like when things get heated,
Exactly.
I remember being like totally blown away
Yeah.
by his statement that you should never tell someone they're wrong.
Oh, yeah.
It seems so counterintuitive.
Right. Especially if you feel really strongly
Right.
about your position.
But why does he advocate for that approach?
Well, it all comes back to respecting the other person's perspective.
Okay.
Even when you disagree,
Okay.
directly telling someone they're wrong just puts them on the defensive.
Right.
And that makes it much harder to find common ground.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you express a differing opinion without
Right.
sparking a conflict?
Well, he suggests techniques like using those I statements
All right.
to focus on your own experience and perspective.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of saying, you're wrong about that, you could say something like, I understand your point of view, but I see things a bit differently.
Okay.
So you're acknowledging their perspective
Right.
while still allowing yourself to express your own.
It's like that subtle shift in language that can really
It is.
change how the conversation unfolds.
For sure. It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between assertiveness and respect.
Exactly. What other gems does he offer for handling those potentially awkward moments in conversations?
He gives some really practical tips on how to gently steer a conversation back on track
Okay.
if someone gets off topic.
Oh, yeah, that happens all the time.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
So instead of abruptly changing the subject,
Right.
you can try to like subtly remind them of the original topic
Okay.
or ask a question that relates back to the main point.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So you're like respecting their thoughts,
Yeah.
but also making sure that the conversation stays focused.
Exactly.
Does he address the role of humor in communication?
He does.
Because I've always found that, a well-placed joke can really lighten the mood.
Sure.
But I also know that humor can totally backfire
Oh, yeah.
if it's not done right.
If it's inappropriate or forced.
Yeah.
You got to read the room
Right.
and use humor judiciously.
So being sensitive to the context
Yeah.
and the other person's sensibilities.
Exactly.
Now, shifting gears a bit, I'm
Mhm.
curious to hear about the book's insights on body language. I know nonverbal cues play a huge role in communication,
Totally.
but I've always found them a bit tricky to interpret.
Yeah, me too.
What does Greenberg have to say about this?
Well, he dedicates a whole section to body language,
Okay.
emphasizing that our bodies often communicate more honestly
Wow.
than our words.
That's so true.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're feeling nervous or uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
it'll likely show up in your posture or your gestures or even your facial expressions.
It's funny because sometimes I catch myself like fidgeting
Yeah.
or avoiding eye contact when I'm feeling anxious.
Right.
And I know that probably undermines what I'm trying to say.
Totally.
Does he offer any advice on how to be more aware of our own body language
He does.
and use it to our advantage?
He provides some specific examples of gestures to watch out for.
Okay, like what?
Well, like crossed arms
Okay.
can often signal defensiveness or resistance.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And leaning forward can indicate interest or engagement.
Okay, so it's like
Yeah.
leaning in.
Exact shows that you're engaged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he also stresses the importance of eye contact,
Right.
but in a way that feels natural and comfortable.
Yeah, not creepy.
Not forced or creepy.
Right.
Right.
That makes me think about the cultural differences surrounding eye contact.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I know in some cultures, direct eye contact is seen as a sign of respect,
Mm-hmm.
but in others, it can be interpreted as aggressive
Totally.
or confrontational.
Yeah, it's a really important cultural nuance.
Does Greenberg address those
He does.
cultural nuances?
He emphasizes the importance of being culturally sensitive
Okay.
and adjusting your communication style accordingly.
So, for example, if you're interacting with someone from a culture where direct eye contact is less common,
Right.
what do?
You might try looking at like the bridge of their nose
Okay.
or their forehead
Instead of directly into their eyes.
instead of directly into their eyes. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So it creates that illusion of eye contact without
Yeah.
feeling as intense. I like that.
Yeah.
I've also heard about the importance of personal space
Oh, yeah.
in communication.
Huge.
Is that something that he covers?
He does.
Yeah.
He breaks down personal space into different zones,
Okay.
ranging from the intimate zone,
Uh-huh.
which is reserved for close relationships,
Okay.
all the way to the public zone
Okay.
for more formal interactions.
Gotcha.
And the key is to just be sensitive to the other person's cues
Right.
and adjust your distance accordingly.
Yeah. Because standing too close can make someone feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
But standing too far away can signal disinterest.
Yeah, you don't want it to seem like you're not engaged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Right.
that feels respectful and appropriate.
Exactly.
So being mindful of our nonverbal cues
Yeah,
and respecting personal space are really key aspects of communication.
for sure.
I remember Greenberg also mentioned the importance of tact.
Oh, yeah, tact.
It's a word
Yes.
that we hear a lot. But I'm not sure I fully grasp what it means in the context of communication.
Right.
How does he define it?
Well, he describes tact as being considerate of the other person's feelings
Okay.
and avoiding behaviors that might offend or upset them.
Okay.
It's about reading the room
Right.
and adjusting your communication style to fit the context.
Because what might be appropriate in one setting
Right.
might be totally inappropriate in another.
Exactly.
So it goes beyond just being polite.
Yeah.
It's about genuinely caring about the other person's experience.
Yeah, I like that.
What other practical examples does he offer?
He mentions things like avoiding gossip
Okay.
interrupting or monopolizing the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It's about being a good listener,
Uh-huh.
respecting other people's time and opinions, and just generally being pleasant to interact with.
So tact is about striking that delicate balance between being authentic,
Yeah.
but also being mindful of how we come across to others.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a lot about understanding the other person in a conversation,
Right.
but does the book offer any guidance on how to evaluate the person we're communicating with?
That's a great question.
I'm thinking about situations where you need to assess someone's credibility or trustworthiness.
Oh, yeah, especially in professional settings.
Exactly.
He does talk about that.
Okay.
He talks about evaluating your interlocutor's effectiveness
Right.
and value guidelines.
What does he mean by effectiveness in this context?
Well, he breaks it down into 4 key aspects.
Okay.
Energy level, the structure of energy, social maturity, and social adequacy.
So it's basically like a rubric for assessing someone's communication competence.
Exactly.
And what about value guidelines?
Value guidelines are about identifying what drives them,
Okay.
their core values and motivations.
So are they driven by material wealth?
Yeah.
Or authority, power, knowledge, something else?
Exactly, and by understanding what they value. You can tailor your communication to resonate with their core beliefs.
Well, I see.
And increase the chances of a successful interaction.
This all sounds incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, how do you apply these concepts in real-life conversations?
Right.
It seems like a lot to process.
It is.
While also trying to, stay present in the moment.
It takes practice.
Okay.
It starts with observation.
Okay.
Pay attention to how people communicate, both verbally and non-verbally.
Okay.
Notice their patterns, their habits, their preferences.
Okay.
The more you observe,
Yeah.
the better you'll become at reading people and adapting your communication style accordingly.
So it's about sharpening those observational skills.
Exactly.
And becoming more attuned to those subtle cues
Yeah.
that people give off.
I agree.
It sounds like a fascinating process of ongoing learning.
It is.
And refinement.
It is.
And remember, just as we're evaluating them,
Right.
they're evaluating us.
Exactly. So it's a two-way street.
Right.
You want to make sure that you're presenting yourself
Yeah.
in the best light possible.
Does the book offer any advice on how to become more self-aware
He does.
and improve our own communication style?
He provides some practical exercises for boosting self-awareness.
Like what?
Like recording yourself speaking
Oh, okay.
or asking trusted friends for feedback.
Okay.
The key is to be open to learning and growing,
Right.
even if it means confronting some uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
It could be tough.
It can be, but it's so valuable.
Yeah, because it's easy to get stuck in our own patterns
Yeah,
and not realize how we're coming across.
exactly.
Feedback from trusted sources can be so enlightening,
For sure.
even if it's not always what we want to hear.
Exactly.
He also shares some powerful techniques for reframing negative statements
Oh, yeah.
into positive ones.
It's like a communication superpower
Right.
that can transform criticism
Yeah.
into constructive feedback.
Now that you mention it, I remember a technique he called turning complaints into constructive requests.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of saying something like, "You're always late," which comes across as blaming and accusatory,
Right.
you can try a more empathetic approach.
Okay.
Like, "I noticed you've been arriving a bit later than usual lately. Is everything okay?"
Oh,
So it shifts the focus from blame to concern
all right.
and opens the door for a more productive and supportive conversation.
So it's like replacing judgment with genuine curiosity
Exactly.
and a desire to understand the other person's perspective.
Yeah, I love that.
That subtle shift in language can make a world of difference.
It really can.
It reminds me of his advice on expressing differing opinions respectfully.
Yes.
It's not about attacking the other person,
Right.
but rather acknowledging their viewpoint
Yes.
while still stating your own.
Exactly.
It's all interconnected.
It is.
These techniques just create a more harmonious
For sure.
and productive communication environment.
Yeah, where both parties feel heard and respected,
Right.
even when disagreements arise.
It sounds like Greenberg's approach to communication is about empowering us
Yeah.
to navigate those tricky conversations with grace and confidence.
I agree.
What other gems does he offer for handling disagreements effectively?
Well, he stresses the importance of choosing our battles wisely.
Okay.
Not every disagreement needs to become a full-blown argument.
Right.
Sometimes it's better to just agree to disagree
Yeah.
and move on.
especially if the issue isn't that important.
Exactly.
I'm definitely guilty of getting caught up in the heat of the moment,
Me too.
arguing points that in retrospect weren't worth the energy.
Weren't worth it.
Yeah.
He also emphasizes the power of focusing on solutions rather than dwelling on problems.
So instead of saying, you never listened to me,
Right.
which just exacerbates the issue,
Exactly.
you could try a more solution-oriented approach.
Yeah, like I feel like my opinions aren't being heard. Could we try to communicate more effectively? So you're inviting collaboration and opening the door to finding a mutually agreeable solution.
So it's about shifting the focus from blame and negativity to a more positive and productive mindset.
I love that.
Do you have any other examples of how to turn complaints into constructive requests?
Sure.
I'm finding this technique particularly helpful.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Instead of saying your presentation was boring,
Oh, yeah.
which can be hurtful and demotivating,
Yeah, no one wants to hear that.
you could say something like, I appreciated the information you shared in your presentation.
Okay.
I'm curious to learn more about this specific aspect.
Oh,
So you're acknowledging the effort
Right.
while also suggesting areas for improvement.
that's great.
Yeah.
It's like offering constructive feedback
Yeah.
without crushing the other person's spirit.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between honesty and empathy. Being truthful while also being kind.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
Yeah, it's been great.
We've covered so much ground, from the foundations of sincerity and active listening to tactical tips for handling disagreements
Right?
and the nuances of body language.
Yeah, we've really gone deep.
I'm feeling inspired to put all these principles into practice
Me too.
and elevate my own communication game.
I think we all can.
Speaking of growth and improvement, we've touched upon many fascinating aspects of communication,
We have.
but we haven't yet explored how to end conversations effectively.
Oh, that's a good point.
I'm curious to hear what Greenberg has to say about leaving a positive, lasting impression.
Yeah.
What insights does he offer in that regard?
That's coming up in the next part of our deep dive.
Oh, okay. Can't wait.
We'll explore Greenberg's advice on closing conversations gracefully and leaving a positive, lasting impression.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, it's like we spend so much time thinking about that first impression.
Right.
We forget how to, finish strong.
Exactly. It's like the final brushstroke on a masterpiece.
Ooh, I like that.
It can either elevate the whole thing
Yeah.
or leave you feeling like,
Right.
it's unfinished.
And Greenberg says that ending a conversation well is about more than just saying goodbye.
Right.
It's about leaving the other person with a positive feeling.
Yeah, and reinforcing the connection you've built.
Yeah, I
Wow.
can see how that would make a big difference,
Totally.
especially if you interact with them regularly.
Right.
It sets the stage.
Yeah, for future positive interactions.
Exactly what specific advice does he give for ending those conversations gracefully?
Well, one thing he recommends is summarizing the key points of the conversation,
Okay.
just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Right, so it's like a little recap,
Exactly.
and it shows that you're actually paying attention.
Yeah, and it helps prevent any misunderstandings.
That's good. What else does he suggest?
He also emphasizes the importance of reiterating your appreciation for the conversation,
Okay.
whether it was just like a casual chat with a friend
Or a formal business meeting.
Yeah.
Expressing gratitude shows that you value the other person's time and input.
It's such a simple gesture,
It is.
but it can be so powerful.
Yeah.
Does he offer any tips on how to end conversations on a positive note?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when you need to wrap things up,
Right.
but you don't want to seem rude.
Yeah, you don't want to be abrupt.
Right.
He suggests ending with a call to action or a forward-looking statement,
Okay.
even if it's something as simple as, looking forward to catching up again soon, or let me know if you have any questions.
So it's like leaving them with that sense of anticipation that
Yeah.
this is an ongoing connection,
Sure.
not just a one-off interaction.
Exactly.
So Greenberg's approach to ending conversations is all about being intentional and thoughtful.
Yes.
It's not just like rushing to the finish line.
I love that.
Yeah, we've really unpacked a lot of great stuff from this excerpt.
We have.
It's amazing how much practical wisdom.
I know, it's incredible. Greenberg has packed into these 49 simple rules.
It's like a masterclass in communication,
Yeah, it really is.
covering like every aspect.
From the fundamentals of sincerity and active listening
Right.
to tactical tips for handling disagreements, understanding body language.
Even ending conversations gracefully.
It's like having a conversation with a wise and witty friend
I know.
who just happens to be a communication expert.
It really is.
Speaking of wise friends,
Yes.
I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway from this deep dive.
You know what struck me the most amidst all the techniques and strategies?
Yeah?
Is the power of sincerity.
Oh.
When we communicate with genuine authenticity and care,
Hmm.
everything else just seems to fall into place.
So the tips and tricks are helpful,
They are.
but they're just tools to help us express our true selves
Exactly.
more effectively.
Exactly.
It's not about putting on a mask
Right.
or playing a role.
Yeah, just be yourself.
It's about connecting with others
Yes.
from a place of empathy
Yes.
and understanding.
That's when the real magic happens.
Yeah.
When we just let go of pretense and show up as our authentic selves.
Beautifully said. And that brings us to the question we always ask at the end of our deep dives.
Okay.
What's one communication skill you'll focus on improving this week? What small change can you make today to become a better communicator?
Well, I think whether it's practicing active listening,
Okay.
being more mindful of our body language,
Sure.
or mastering the art of the well-placed compliment,
Yeah.
there's always something we can do to elevate our communication game.
Right.
The key is to just choose one area
Yeah.
and commit to making that conscious effort to improve.
I love that it's about taking those small but consistent steps
Yeah,
that lead to big growth over time.
that's exactly.
Communication is a skill,
Yes.
not a talent.
Right.
It's something we can all learn and improve upon with practice and dedication.
And the rewards are immeasurable.
I agree.
It enhances our relationships,
Yeah.
boosts our confidence, and just allows us to navigate the world with greater ease and grace.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive
It's been a pleasure.
into the art of communication.
Yeah.
We hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as we did.
Me too.
Remember, the journey to becoming a communication genius begins with a single step.
What will yours be?
Until next time, keep those conversations flowing
Yes.
and keep those connections strong.